Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where it's all about helping you complete your financial journey to retirement. Discover time-tested strategies and get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Break away from the herd and go for the retirement you dream of. And now, here's your host, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
All right, that's me, my cue. I am the income engineer. I am Kraig Strom. You heard it from Tosh there. Fantastic. I appreciate the intro always. Now, those of you who are new to the show, you are on Personal Pension Radio. Those of you who have been with the show for a long time, thank you so much for all your support. I really appreciate the reviews on iTunes. I love the emails, the feedback, the follow-up. I even love the criticisms and the suggestions for improvements. With that said, I am going to jump right into things as soon as I can. I gotta remember, though, for those of you who are impatient when it comes to my show getting into the meat of things for the topic in the day, you have to remember that there's lots of new listeners in the podcast world all the time. New listeners happening every minute, every second of the day. So I do need to let people know that I am a certified financial planning professional. I am known as the income engineer because that's what the trademark certificate on the wall says. My mission is to deliver the retirement dream that Wall Street has been promising for decades, but unfortunately they've only been teaching financial advisors really half the story. It's really a half-baked idea on how to maximize retirement, and maximizing retirement means lifestyle, really making sure that you can have a great lifestyle today and carry that lifestyle forward with you into a retirement that you might want to look forward to. I really want to help you pull back the curtain on mainstream financial advice so that you can be primed and ready to ask questions that are right for you. You've got to be able to ask some questions, challenge the mainstream way of thinking so that you can get to what's really right for you. Now, again, new to the show, if you are looking for personalpensionradio.com, it is under construction and it's going to be that way for a while because as a licensed financial advisor, unlike unlicensed financial entertainers, I actually have to go through review processes whenever I change anything. So what I've done recently is I've put Personal Pension Radio under construction, and I direct everybody who listens to the show and just in general right now through my LinkedIn page. So if you want to look me up, go to LinkedIn and just search Kraig Strom, Kraig with a K, or you can go to kraigstrom.com and it'll take you right to my LinkedIn page, KraigStrom.com. Now, let's jump in. I want to make sure that I don't forget, I always put a disclosure, my little mini disclosure in the middle or beginning of the show, that I am not an attorney. I am not a certified public accountant. I am, as I said earlier, a certified financial planning professional. I'm also a chartered financial consultant. I have all the letters and numbers after my name and the experience in years and years of experience that make me, in my humble opinion, a really good certified financial planning professional. All that said doesn't mean you should act on the advice that you hear on my show or act on things as if it was advice for you, because it's not. It's good, solid, general information is my goal, but those things that you hear that you think might be relevant for you, we should meet in person or on a go-to meeting, like a web meeting. But whatever you do, please don't act on things that you hear from financial entertainers or radio and podcast folks that you've never met with. Make sure that you sit down with a qualified financial planner. All right, now, I've got a bonus segment. Some of you have listened to the show before know that the bonus segment has been my deal of the week because I love to talk about really cool deals. So I actually do have technically a deal of the week that I'll tell you about as I wrap this up. But the bonus segment is arguably the most cool thing I have ever been able to do. And the reason that I did not put out a podcast last week was because of this particular adventure. So last week on a Thursday, myself and 12 of my invited guests, we went to Coronado, California. There's a naval base there, naval air station there. So we all met there, gathered there, and we were met by representatives of the Distinguished Visitor Program with the United States Navy. We got a great tour of the base. We even got to see where the F-18 Super Hornets and jets are serviced and repaired. It looked like a chop shop out of some, Gone in 60 Seconds kind of movie, but it was all F-18 jets. It was so cool. Once we were done with our tour of that facility, we were geared up and loaded up on a C-2 Greyhound cargo plane, and we were flown about 100 miles offshore, off the coast of California, and we landed on the USS John C. Stennis aircraft carrier. That's right, we landed on an aircraft carrier in what's called an arrested landing. We actually hooked up on one of those big cables stretched across the aircraft carrier, and we went from 150 miles an hour to 0 in a little over 2 seconds. And it was one heck of a ride. Amazing. So now we landed on the aircraft carrier. The back door of the cargo plane opens up, and we are on the deck. 4.5 acres of aircraft carrier, Nimitz class, twin nuclear reactors, 1,094 feet long. Amazing. We're on the deck of an aircraft carrier with F-18 Super Hornet jets taxiing by to the catapult and launching off the deck. Right when we got there, we were right in the middle of the action. Not in the middle, we were off to the side, but we were that close to the action. You could feel the heat off the afterburners of the jets. It was absolutely amazing. We were then shuffled downstairs. Now, let me say that. Stairs, not so much. Ladders. Lots and lots of ladders. Nothing on an aircraft carrier is soft and cuddly. It's all harsh, hard, pokey, and hurtful if you bang your knee against it. So everyone was encouraged to be very careful. Now, we were hustled downstairs. We got our gear from our cargo flight over, and we changed our gear out to earmuffs and earplugs, and we headed right back up on the deck after a little debrief, right back up on the deck, and we spent a bunch of time on the deck watching the jets, close proximity, on the deck, watching them land, watching them take off. Absolutely amazing to see the men and women of the U.S. Navy and how just beautifully choreographed they all are together. Truly increased my level of respect for the men and women who serve and who are serving today, right now, out there on the water, in the air, on the ground. Just amazing. So once we were done on the deck, we got a tour of a couple more spots inside the ship, and then we headed to lunch or dinner. We went to dinner with the crew, and just a fantastic dinner, really awesome. We had some more touring around. We got to see the gigantic cargo area down underneath the ship. Absolutely just ginormous, I guess is an excellent word for that. Ginormous. It was really amazing. Now, we went through a variety of different things, and after dinner, though, we actually got to see night operations. We got to see planes appearing out of the pitch black sky and landing on the deck of the aircraft carrier with no lights on. No lights on the aircraft carrier whatsoever, and these jets are coming in at 150 miles an hour and touching down and hooking up. Really, really cool. Once we were done with that, about 10:30, we were sent off to our cabins to go to bed. And, of course, the jets kept doing their touch and goes and landings and hookups until midnight, which sounded like, from our room, they were landing on top of our room, and it was a bus crash every 10 or 15 minutes. And it was just incredible. So there's no way to sleep, at least for me. I'm not a sleeping pill kind of guy. Some of the folks in our group actually did some sleeping pills and slept pretty well. I'm not that kind of guy, so wow, it wasn't until past midnight that I finally, exhausted, fell asleep. We woke up the next day, and we had breakfast with the crew, commanding officers mess, and we headed back to tour. We went through all kinds of really cool tours and introductions and met all kinds of amazing people on the ship. And by 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon, we were debriefed and we were getting back on that cargo plane, and we did a catapult launch off the deck. Unbelievable. 0 to 130 miles an hour in just about 2.5 seconds, folks. 2.5 seconds. 0 to 150. Wow. And you're facing backwards in the plane. Now, I am going to be putting out a nice YouTube video on this. When I get it ready, I'll actually post it and link it into my LinkedIn page. But I told you I was going to tell you about my deal of the week, right? Deal of the week. Well, how in the world is a distinguished visitor program trip to an aircraft carrier? How is that the deal of the week? Well, how much did it cost to do the trip? It was $60. $60 for food. That's how much the Navy asked us for food. How do I sign up for that, you say, Craig? You go to the website and you search for Navy Distinguished Visitor Program, and you'll find a link and information, I believe. I was introduced through someone via email, and you can find it through the Distinguished Visitor Program, U.S. Navy, and you can find that they go out on the East Coast and on the West Coast, that they have these trips. And they're looking for influencers, people with large followings, people who work with corporations, CEOs, that are, famous people, those kind of things. They're looking for good publicity for the Navy. So that's what you're looking for there. It's called the Distinguished Visitor Program, United States Navy. I'm sure that other branches of the military have the same kind of program. I'm just telling you, unbelievable. One of the coolest things I've ever done. So, needless to say, I came back off that little adventure a wee bit tired. So, I did not go for another podcast last week. I actually took some time off. Now, all right, let's jump into the first segment. College planning mistakes to avoid. It is college application season as this podcast is coming out just before October. October is when college applications and FAFSAs and all the forms and everything starts going in for folks who are looking towards college. It is college application season. And I just want to put out a quick heads up to everybody. This is an area that I have not talked about a great deal on my podcast, but I am passionate about this type of planning. So please, please, please hear me on this. Everybody has to fill out. If you're going to send a kid off to college, if you are a kid listening to this and you're going to go to college, everybody has to fill out the FAFSA, right? The free application. Now, most of these forms, big, long, lengthy forms, they go in with some kind of a mistake. Inevitably, there is a mistake on the FAFSA, right? So, please, please hear me when I say this. The FAFSA form, if you make a mistake on it, is usually a 4 to 6 week turnaround for them to send it back to you. And here's the thing. Federal aid, financial aid, school aid, all of the various different aid types are first come, first serve. First come, first serve means that if you screw up on the FAFSA or the CSS profile, that's what you would turn in for a private school. If you screw up on those two documents, or if the FAFSA form doesn't match the information that you put on the CSS profile, that's going to trigger a problem, and it's going to get sent back. And remember, first come, first serve. If you're like me, I like bacon. If you're at the end of the buffet line, you might not end up getting some bacon because everybody else is taking the bacon, right? If you're at the end of the FAFSA and the CSS profile and the college application lines for federal aid and school aid and grant and gift aid, you might not get it. So you want to be really careful on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Now, also, when you're filling out some of these things, some huge mistakes to avoid, huge mistakes to avoid is how you report your real estate. If you own a home, now I'm going to use Southern California as an example. If you own a home in Southern California, especially in the area where I live, it's rare that you're going to find somebody that has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that is less than $400,000. It is rare. Those of you listening to this in the Midwest and on the East Coast, and you're thinking, wow, $400,000, that's a castle. No, here it's 3 bedrooms, 2-bath, and a small postage stamp yard. It's not big. But what folks make it, one of the big mistakes that people make when they're filling out the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form, when they fill it out, it says, what's the value of the house you live in? Well, they just write it down. No, you don't just write it down, because it's just the federal government does know that it is not fair that the houses here in California are just abnormally much, much higher than houses in Indiana, for example. So they allow you to use a national index multiplier, a real estate factoring program or factoring formula that says, how much did you buy your house for? When did you buy it? Use this factor. And you can find that when you search financialaid.gov. You can find the index multiplier for real estate when you're looking up financial aid stuff, or you can just send me an email at Kraig@kraigstrom.com. I'm happy to talk to you about it. That's actually the smartest thing you can probably do, is get some help, because it is extremely expensive. If you do it wrong, your real estate ends up getting counted against you for certain financial aid requests with private colleges and grants and things like that. So remember that. Your real estate, really, really important. Now, rental real estate. Rental real estate. If you own rental properties, houses you do not live in, that's a major issue. There are some legal arrangements that you can put in place with your real estate. And I talked to somebody just the other day, actually, that had $700,000 worth of real estate, rental properties, that were just in their regular living trust. Well, that's all going to get counted in your assets, and then by a certain factor against you for the amount of money that you will be expected to contribute to the college process, right? So if you hold your real estate in the proper type of limited liability corporation, for example, you might seriously improve your expected family contribution numbers when it comes to college planning. That's a big, big deal. Now, that's another area that is very nuanced. This is one of those perfect examples of, please don't go out and do things or act on things as if you're hearing advice. You are not. You're hearing topics of discussion that perhaps you might want to send me an email at Kraig, don't forget Kraig, at kraigstrom.com, and ask for a web meeting, a phone call, a GoToMeeting, something where we can talk through this in your specific situation. Now, another thing to watch out for. If you own and operate a business with less than 100 employees, don't put the business down on your FAFSA form. It's not a reportable asset. You've got to pay attention to that. It does say that in the rules, but it's so hard to keep track of all the rules. And we talked to somebody recently who has a $2 million business, and they wrote it on their federal aid package, their federal application. They have 10 employees. It was not supposed to be on the FAFSA form. It wasn't supposed to be there. So they didn't know that. It would have made an enormous difference, tens of thousands of dollars in benefits to their child. Another big, big item that I've seen is assets in the child's name count 400% against the child when it comes to the FAFSA and the aid assessments, okay? They actually count 400%. So $5,000 in the name of your son or daughter is the equivalent of $20,000 in your personal checking account. Which would you rather have? 20 grand in the checking account personal, or 5 grand over in Junior's account that is now treated as if there was another $15,000 on top of it when it comes to financial aid, gift aid, grant aid, etc. Okay? Now, this final one I want you to be careful with, and there is so much more to this. I actually teach classes on this, so there's a lot more to this than just these few, but I want you to be thinking about it. Better yet, I want you to be contacting me at Kraig@kraigstrom.com. Let's have a deeper dive into this, because there is time to make a difference. Now, Average time to complete a 4-year college. What is the national average? How many years, national average, does it take to complete a 4-year university in the United States today? Dun, da, da, 5.5 years. 5.5 years is the average time to complete a 4-year degree. Now, what is the number one reason, though? Here's a really good question. What's the number one reason for 5.5 years to complete a 4-year college degree? Dun, da, da. Changing majors. Changing majors is the number one reason that kids are taking 5.5 years to get through a 4-year degree. So one of the biggest places that you can save money on college is to set your child, your son or daughter, up to be getting out of school in 4.5 years, save that extra year of tuition, and more importantly, if they get out of school in less than 5.5 years, what else can they be doing? They can be going off to work, right? They can have an extra year of income earning in their life, which can make the difference in hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime, right? Now, we offer full financial planning services that include 2 very different but very important assessments for your son or daughter. They are designed to help your child zero in on the right profession, the right major that will get them to that profession. If you're interested in college planning in this way, please, again, Kraig at kraigstrom.com. I'd love to talk to you about it. Now, in the last section, this next section of the show, segment 2, this is actually a listener question section that I really appreciate the questions that come in. I do my best to get to them, and thank you so much. If you haven't listened to episode 137, we had a follow-up question from a listener on the topic of 30-year mortgages versus 15-year mortgages, and the question there. So please go back, take a look at that, or take a listen to that. It was a great follow-up question on episode 136 to episode 137. Now, this week, though, listener question. So 2 of them. The first question was, first started off this way. Thank you for your podcast, Kraig. Well, I appreciate the thank yous. It really helps. And they go on to say, I appreciate your no-nonsense delivery. Well, that's me. No nonsense. I have to be careful and try to filter more often. My wife and I have 2 kids, and we're working on buying our first home. Do we need a living trust? Awesome question. Totally great question. Do we need a living trust, right? So they have 2 kids. They don't currently own a home, but they're buying one, right? Now, short answer, yes, 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 yes. You do need a living trust, but only for this one important reason, okay? One really important reason, because some people think they can get a living trust and it will provide them some sort of liability protection or asset protection in some way, and that is just simply not true. It's not true. There is no asset protection or liability protection from a living trust. The real answer, for sure, other than yes, 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 you need a living trust, you should get one. And I should clarify that. You don't need a living trust. You should absolutely want one if you love your children. If you love your children, if you love your family, and you dislike the idea of your children going to the state as becoming wards of the state because you didn't do your trust and wills and your guardianship documents. If you didn't do any of that and you and your wife die, who becomes the guardian of your children? And a lot of people will answer that question and they'll say, oh, my Aunt Susie or my sister Rhonda. No, that's not correct. If you die without a trust or will or guardianship documents in place, the county you live in most cases, Child Protective Services, Child Services, will become the legal guardians of your children, and then your family will have to go and argue to get custody of your children. And they will most likely have to pay an attorney many thousands of dollars to take them through that family court nightmare. Okay? So you and your wife specifically, if you're in a community property state like California, you don't need a living trust. You don't need a will. If one of you dies, the other one takes over everything. It's pretty straightforward stuff. On the other hand, if both of you die and you have a home in California, I'm going to use that as my example. In California, your family members, children included, will have to go through the probate system. The probate system is designed to basically settle the assets of deceased people. And it goes through this terribly complicated, long drawn out, expensive process where attorneys will get usually a minimum of $8,000 to $10,000 in statutory fees and maybe more depending on how complicated it is. And then there's that guardianship issue for your kids, right? So if we just talk about the real estate someday, right, that you're going to buy a house and you don't have a living trust and you and your wife died, right? Something happened. Or what if you did not die, right? True story. We have someone that we work with, a certified public accountant, had a terrible car accident with him and his wife in the car, terrible car accident. And both of them were unconscious in induced comas for weeks. Weeks. They were out of commission. Both, they were going to live. The doctors fully expected them to live, but they needed to hold the coma to basically let the swelling and everything in their body come down because of the serious injuries they had. Now, if anything were to be needed on their estate, their home, their bank accounts, anything, bills that need to be paid while they're unconscious, if they don't have their living trust done, their powers of attorney done, if they don't have any of those documents done, nobody else is authorized to actually do anything on their behalf, whether it was related to their home, whether it's related to their checking account, right? So the short answer was yes, yes, yes. Get your living trust and powers of attorney and get your will done. You go to an attorney, it shouldn't cost more than $1,800 to $2,500 nowadays, depending on how complicated yours is. You really don't want to go cheap. Please don't go cheap. You really want to get somebody you want to get an attorney that's going to be there for you, that's going to be asset protection and liability protection minded, right? Make sure that you get what you pay for in many cases when it comes to living trusts and wills and such, okay? Now, you need all the pieces that go with it. So what are the pieces that I'm talking about? When you get a living trust, you really should also be getting at the same time a will. A personal last will and testament goes with your living trust. Powers of attorney. Powers of attorney for financial matters says, hey, if you're unconscious after the car accident and you can't make decisions on your IRA, your 401k, your real estate holdings, any of that, right? If you can't make decisions on your own, the person who has power of attorney for you will be able to do those things on your behalf. You also need a healthcare directive. It's also called a healthcare power of attorney. That if you're unconscious, you want to make sure that you've got someone who is duly authorized to make healthcare related decisions on your behalf that match your wishes. Also, your trust and your will include, if you get it from the right attorney, a good thorough trust and will also have provisions for your children. If you have a special needs child, if you have young, very minor children, you'll have provisions that you can build in to make sure that they don't have to go through the family court system to figure out who should be the guardian of your kids. You should already have that named and set out there in black and white, right? So it's a trust, wills, powers of attorney, children's provisions. Those are all things that you really, really should have. Now, like I joked before, you don't need any of that if you don't like your kids, you don't like your family. Just leave it up to chance, and if something happens, they can deal with the nightmare after you're gone, right? But obviously this isn't somebody, I'm sure that's not what you're thinking. And in a very serious way, I say, please, yes, please, get your trust and your wills and your guardianship stuff set. No more than $2,500. And you get an attorney that stays with you. If something does happen, you go get a cheap trust, cheap wills, powers of attorney. You don't have an attorney to stand by you. You get to pay for that attorney separate later on, right? So you get what you pay for. Now, the last and final question that I wanted to go over today was this one here. It says, Kraig, my husband and I have 3 rental properties and are wondering if we should put them in an LLC. So just buzzwords, limited liability corporation. Some friends of ours said we should just get a big umbrella liability policy and we'd be fine. What do you think? P.S. Thank you for doing the show. Look at that. Thank you so much for the positive feedback. I appreciate that. Now, the question is, we got 3 rental properties, and should we get more umbrella liability insurance like our friends tell us, or just put it in an LLC, a limited liability company? Well, your friends are right and wrong. You should get more umbrella liability insurance. Umbrella liability insurance is what you can add on to your primary homeowners and automobile insurance, and it really helps you in the cases of civil judgments. If you had a civil case brought against you as a result of any number of things, right? So if you had a car accident and someone sued you in civil court, well, the umbrella liability could help. If you had somebody fall down on the front steps of your property, the umbrella liability insurance company can come in and be very helpful. Now, on the other hand, true story of a teen driver. How many folks out there with teen drivers? I'm not raising my hand anymore because my daughter turned 20 this month. So she's not a teenager anymore, but she's out there driving, right? But here's a story, true story of a teen driver who was driving a little reckless. It was definitely deemed that she was driving reckless, maybe fumbling with her cell phone or something. She was reckless driving, and she struck a little girl in a crosswalk. The little girl was just walking out. She wasn't paying attention. She struck this little girl, did not kill the girl, injured her, permanently damaged her for life, this young girl. Now, civil case for sure is broad. On the other hand, criminal cases where she was found to be criminally liable, reckless driving, right, carried punitive damages. Punitive damages are not covered by umbrella liability insurance. Punitive damages by their nature are punishment. They are punishment. And they're just not covered by most, if any. I don't know any insurance that covers, punitive damages. And in this case, there were pretty severe punitive damages. So that's not covered by umbrella liability insurance. And if you think these things can't happen, just look around you and you realize, you've got lots of places out there where, in California, for example, if you can get in front of a jury in California, I've heard attorneys call juries in California the bank. I got to get my client to the bank, because juries are known in many cases, if you tell the story right, they award punitive damages as a way of punishing that person, right? So this young teen driver, subject to punitive damages, not covered by umbrella insurance. So that's why I said somewhat right, but wrong as well, in that I do believe that you really should get and put real estate rental property inside a limited liability corporate entity, so that what it does is it really just puts a fence around that asset. So if something bad happens and somebody wanted to sue related to the asset on that inside that limited liability corporation, it would be isolated to that one LLC. It would be more difficult to break out of that and then try and bring your personal assets in. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have umbrella liability insurance. You should have both. You should actually have a big umbrella liability policy. I mean, I tell folks nowadays at least $2 million. It's not expensive. It's some of the least expensive insurance you can get. It's really important. Get great car insurance, great homeowners insurance, and get at least $1 million. That's the smallest amount. But for the price, in most cases, I tell folks, go for the $2 million umbrella policy in addition to the limited liability company. And if you have more questions about that, I work very closely with an awesome law firm. I work with one of the best asset protection law firms in the country, and we do on the law side, limited liability corporations in these conversations all day long, and we work with folks all over the country. So if you have questions about this and you really want to dive into your specific situation, I can help with the legal question connections as well, right directly down the hall from my office. So that's the answer to the question. Keep those questions coming. So appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the Distinguished Visitor Program. Really an awesome, awesome trip. And remember, it was the deal of the week because it only cost $60 and it was priceless. So with that, I'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you are there, we would appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.
Now for the disclosure. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended for solicitation, sale or purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. The term personal pension refers to a marketing name designed to educate future retirees and retirees about the economic principles behind creating their own pension-like income. The term personal pension is not intended to be confused with a defined benefit pension plan offered by an employer or by a government entity.